everyone, welcome back to Rolling Solo. My name is Adam Smith, and in this video, part number 2, our adventure continues in Role Player Adventures from Thunderworks Games. We're currently in adventure number 1, Battle at Blacklake. We're going to pick things up exactly where we left them off in the last video, so if you haven't checked out my unboxing setup video and part number 1, you're going to want to do that to understand how we got to where we currently are. Without further ado, we'll dive right into gameplay, but the very first thing we do need to touch on is one major correction from part number 1 that I want to highlight. Around the 1740 mark or so in the prior video, part number 1, I talked about the bonus play limit. Now, the bonus play limit is specific to the number of bonus play tokens that you have available to you. It is not how many cards you can actually use from your hand to manipulate dice in skill checks and combat. That limit is above it, and you can see it says play limit of 4. So when I'm playing true solo, I can use up to 4 cards in any skill check or combat to help me out. But on top of it, I also have the ability to play my 1 bonus play token, which would net me a total of 5 cards if I wanted to use that many. So I actually had a lot more options than I thought I did in part number 1. That was a slip up on my part, but the good news is there was no major game impact, and most of the cards that I had did not help me out in terms of trying to be successful at the checks, and we were able to make it through the majority of them anyway. So looking at our map here, I left a choice with you guys in the comments from part number 1 as to what we should do next. Should we double back and head towards the goblin camp in order to see what's going on there? Although we know Tarek has gone over there and dealt with the goblins, but it would be interesting to see what's over there maybe prior to going to the outpost wall. And based on the feedback from part number 1, it seemed like there was interest in actually heading to that goblin camp, so why not? The party is going to head back in the direction we came from originally. We're stopping at the Borland Prairie. Now, it is worth mentioning that if I wanted to travel from the Knoll camp straight over to the Goblin camp, heading to the left and wrapping around the lake, that would be a-okay. As it mentions inside the rulebook, if you've already visited a location in the past, you do not have to stop and jump into the adventure book to interact with it. You can just pass straight on through. And of course, now that there's no encounter tokens in either of the 2 spaces leading to the goblin camp, I also don't have to deal with those either. So I could skip straight to the goblin camp, but there might be a reason to stop here at the prairie once more. And this is actually a good example of showing you that actually revisiting locations you've already been to can open the door up to other options. So you can see here, this was the location we began our adventure in part number 1. We read through this, and there was XP at the location at the time, sitting on the map. So we went to the second action there, which said, otherwise collect the XP from the location and continue reading. And then we continued on from there. But this time, we've arrived back at the same location we've been at before, and it's telling us if there's no XP at this location, we're actually going to go to A1. Taking a look at the options here at this location, we can use an item, we can rest, and we could move to another location. Now, I'd love to rest because, as you guys remember from part number 1, my rest did not, or was not, as successful as I wish it could have been. But the thing is, right now, my rest token is flipped face down, and when your rest token is face down, you cannot take that rest action. So you have to do a skill check or a combat first, and at the resolution of either of those, that rest token will flip face up, and then you'll be able to rest at that point once you're given the option to in your storybook. So what we can do is maybe we can move along, although I could technically use an item here, like for instance we gained the pendant down in the Knoll camp, and I never used it at this location yet, so maybe I'll do that first. So we'll take a look at A86 to see if there's anything we can learn about the pendant at this location, and then we're going to head on to the goblin camp. Will likely involve some kind of hopeful skill check or combat there that will allow my rest token to come back upright again, and then we can make sure we rest again. So using the pendant, it states here, when you hold the lodestone pendant by its chain, it spins in a circle. It seems to be attracted to something here, but it needs something other than your hand to hold it in order to give it a clear direction. So we learned a little bit about this pendant when we went to the Knoll camp around metal, and now we have this piece of information on top of it. The party has arrived at the Goblin camp. Let's head into the adventure book here for B. Arriving at the Goblin camp, the first thing it lets us know is to pass storybooks. I'm not going to look at this going forward, as we're never going to have to deal with this while playing solo. And then for the keyword checks, though, this is a great reminder because there are keywords here on our campaign log, and we're going to need to check those as we go through the list in a second. Starting at the very top, if there is no XP at this location, we go to B1, but there is XP at this location, so we're going to skip past that one. The second one, otherwise collect it, so we're going to go do that right now. Collecting the XP at the Goblin camp is going to bring us up from 3 to 4. So we have a total of 4 XP, and one thing you guys likely noticed from a prior shot is I've got some metal coins in this shot, although they're not the focus here, so they're a bit blurry, but they are very, very nice. Thought I'd go ahead and upgrade them. These metal coins didn't come as part of the Role Player Adventures Kickstarter whatsoever. These are actually the coins that came with the original Role Player game. So they are available and they're out there in the wild. Now, on the far right-hand side of this campaign log, we've got keywords Grick, Alarm, and Knoll. So looking at our options inside the storybook here, we are going to stop at the first one that we have a keyword for. So in this case, Knoll. It's going to be B7 is where we're going. Ashes are all that remain of the Goblin encampment. There are no tracks, no bodies, and no stains of blood on the earth. No trace of the battle remains, not even any evidence of Tarek's approach or exit. So we did a really good job cleaning things up after his mess. A few crude spearheads are the only sign that goblins ever camped here. If you didn't know any better, you would have guessed that this was the site of some long-forgotten goblin village, founded ages ago when Nalos and the Dragul lived in harmony. It's as if Tarek blasted the poor creatures into ancient history. He is more formidable operative than you had supposed. It states here, a light breeze shifts the ashes, revealing something Tarek overlooked. Reveal discovery card 95. The item we found in the ashes is an ancient key. That kind of seems important. I'm probably going to have to talk to Tarek about the fact that he missed this, even though he seemingly combed over the camp and cleaned things up after he blasted his way through it. But he missed something that seems to be kind of important. All right, so we have the option to use an item, to rest, or to move to another location. We might as well go ahead and use the ancient key to see if there's anything we can find out about where we could potentially use this key. The ancient key has a nice weight to it. You suspect that it must unlock something of great value. Yeah, I pretty much knew that the second I saw the words ancient key, so I think we've done everything we need to do here at the Goblin camp at this point. I could try combining these items together and seeing if something comes out of it, but nothing that I have is locked, so I know this key is not going to unlock a pendant or unlock the fireball. It's just not going to work, so we're going to continue moving to the outpost at this point. I imagine things are about to get very interesting. Our hero arrives at the outpost wall, and I'm hoping I'm going to run into Tarek the second we jump into the storybook at D. Arriving at the outpost wall, it states if you have the keyword open, then we're moving to D2. We do not have that keyword. The next one says if there's no XP at the location, we go to D1, but there is XP, so we're going to continue reading and we get to collect this XP as well. We now have a total of 5 XP on the campaign log. It says you approach the fortified outpost as the moon sets, leaving you in utter darkness. Behind you, twin fires burn on either side of the shimmering black lake. You feel your way across the rough wood of the outpost's massive gate, but can find no handle or latch, yet the gate holds firm. It must be barred from within. Behind this wall, the Dragul are protecting a powerful artifact. Tarek, the halfling, is nowhere in sight. Well, I guess my hopes around finding him right away was dashed quite quickly here. As I'm sure most of you remember, we were given this fireball potion earlier on, and I've already tried to use the item in a number of different weird ways, but this is the primary use for this potion right now, so let's go ahead and use this. So we'll look up D65. Using the bluestone fireball is going to cost 1 stamina, which is going to come from the supply and be placed inside of the fatigue area on my player board. Now, if I was controlling multiple characters and we wanted to use this fireball, each one of them would be paying a stamina into the fatigue area. The thing to remember is do not take that stamina from your attribute rows and drop it into the fatigue. Take it from the supply. Not every single item that you have when you use it is going to have a stamina cost, but some of them do. So for those, just make sure you check up in the top left-hand corner if there's a cost associated to it. There's some important restrictions around the use of items to make note of. The party's not allowed to use an item if the current storybook entry does not offer the proper choice indicator. Of course, anytime we've used it during this playthrough, we've had the option to do that. The party may not use the same item or same combination of items in the same location more than once. And finally, the party may not use an item if paying its stamina cost would cause the entire party to become exhausted. You uncork the bluestone fireball at the base of the fortified gate and run for cover. A thunderous explosion tears a wide flaming hole in the wall, giving you passage through. Now it's going to talk about map cards, something we haven't seen yet. It says the second action indicator below tells you to reveal a discovery card that is not an item. Some discovery cards will update your map itself. The bottom left corner of these cards indicate where they go on the adventure map. In this case, we're going to place the outpost interior discovery card 16 on map coordinates looks like 4, and remember to add 1 XP to the new location from the supply. Just before we go ahead and update the map, we are now going to record a new keyword on our campaign log open. Of course, we blew open the doors quite aggressively, and then it says to reveal that discovery card it was talking about in the tip above 16. We're going to place 1 XP on top of it, then return discovery card 65 to the discovery deck. So that is the fireball we just used. Now, looking over the map, you're going to see the coordinates on the outer edges of the map to figure out where this card's going to go. So you can see at the very top, we've got Roman numerals 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then going down the side, we have a number of different symbols. And the symbol and the Roman numeral 4 was depicted, so we know exactly where this outpost interior is going. So here's a shot of how things looked prior to us throwing the fireball and how things look now. Our options now are to rest or to move to another location. I'd love to rest, but again, we haven't had a skill check or combat happen yet, and there might be other cards inside the game that will allow us the ability to flip that rest token over, but right now in our adventure, I still can't rest just yet, but we're going to try our hardest very, very soon. So for now, let's move into that outpost interior. We have arrived. Now we go back to the storybook and check out section E. The outpost interior states, if you have the title Revealer of Secrets, go to E18. If you have the title Rogue's Accomplice, go to E1. If you have the title Aid to Org, E17. We don't have any of those titles, so we're going to the otherwise collect the XP from this location and continue reading. You pass through the smoldering hole and enter the Dragul outpost. Its massive wooden walls are solid but roughly constructed. They enclose an open space, empty except for a single chest of white metal and a gray-skinned orc who stands before it with an iron club. The orc shouts in the Dragul language. It's gibberish to you, as if he were making all the sounds but none of the sense of the Nalos common. Between his angry cries, he smashes the metal chest with such force that it shakes the ground around you, but the chest only rings out a remarkably pleasant tone. It remains unbroken, undented, and firmly in place. Enraged, the orc approaches you, shouting and swinging his club wildly. As you watch his outbursts, you catch a glimpse of something moving in the shadows behind him. Tarek Nowlin, blade drawn, carefully approaches the orc from the other side of the outpost. Now this is where things get even more interesting. We have what's introduced now known as faction tracks. So at this location, the choices you make will affect your standing in 3 major factions. You're going to find the favor markers, place them on the 0 starting spaces for all 3 faction tracks on your party journey. You were probably wondering what those things were for earlier on. Well, you're going to find out very soon based on my choices here. And then when ready, we get to make a choice about how we're going to deal with the orc. We have a very interesting decision to make here. We can try and attack this thing, or we can try to understand what he is saying using our intelligence and wisdom. Now, taking a look at my character loadout in terms of what I have available for stamina and different attributes, intelligence is actually quite strong on my character, and I have a decent amount of wisdom, which is, just barely. But altogether, it's actually not that that bad. So I would be able to be a little more aggressive with going after the dice that I might want for that intelligence and wisdom check by trying to interpret what he's saying versus potentially attacking him. And of course, we know how combat can go, but I don't know what this particular individual can throw at me. And being that we have a whole bunch of fatigue in there already, I'm kind of a little bit hesitant to get involved in a full-on combat at this particular point. So maybe we'll go down the road of trying to understand what he's saying. As Terra creeps closer, you try to understand what the org is saying. Dragul and Nalos common are not completely divorced. 1,000 years ago, when all of the Ulos, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, lived in peace, the two languages were a single tongue. But after all these centuries of separation, it's no simple task for you to comprehend the org's angry rants. So we have a skill check here. It's Interpretation 1. So we're going to go to the skill book and pull that out in a second here. You can see the pass and fail, and I can tell you right now, I don't like what the fail says. I found interpretation in the skill book, and for level 1, we have a dice limit of 4 going in. We have the ability to get some XP cubes if we can successfully get dice slotted in there. And we need 1 white die with a 2 result. We need 1 blue die with a 4 result. And then the last one there can be either blue or white and has to be 3. Now, I'm going to be a bit bold here, and the reason I'm going to do this is because I really don't want to fail this particular check because of how much fatigue I already still have on me. Going into combat with this thing is going to result in me becoming exhausted most likely, as I'm probably going to get absolutely thrashed. So I'm going to try my best here and throw everything I can at trying to pass this. Now, I do have the ability to spend up to 3 stamina from intelligence to get 3 blue dice. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, as I need to get 2 of them being blue. So that could work out pretty good just in terms of what happens on the dice when I end up rolling them. And then, of course, 1 for white will hopefully deal with the very first slot that needs to be just a white. But the cards are going to be really where I'm going to need to manipulate things to make this all work. So we're going to spend all 3 from intelligence, 1 from wisdom for a total of 4, setting all of our dice to the dice pool, and we no longer have to draw anything random, so we'll have 3 blue and 1 white. For those counting at home, we now have 11 fatigue in that area there. If we get up to 14, we're going to become exhausted. So again, another reason why I really need to succeed at this. Here we go. We're rolling off to see what we can do. All right, we got ourselves a 3, a 3, a 1, and a 6. That's actually not bad. So here's what I'm thinking for this check. Now, for the very first position, I need a white die that's at a 2. So I'm going to use my spell book here in order to manipulate a white die by increasing it or decreasing it by 1. So that's going to allow me to bring this 3 down to a 2, and that's going to allow me to slot it into the first slot up here. Now, for the next die, we need a 4 blue, and this is where things get interesting. I had originally thought I could go like this and run that way, but I also just realized that I landed a 3, which would satisfy the last one, so I might want to just leave this one alone and just slot it in and say, there you go, no problems, no issues there. So now we need to work around, and I'll take this card out of the equation because we just used this. It goes in the discard because it doesn't have the spent icon. We haven't used the wand yet, but I might use the wand in order to tick this die down from a 6 to a 5, but that still doesn't get us down to the 4 that we actually need. The other thing I have in my back pocket is this Mystic Robes card, and again, just so everyone's aware, I have up to 4 cards I can play here. I've only played 1 so far, but I could go ahead and use Mystic Robes to go ahead and re-roll a blue die, just to see if I happen to get lucky. So let's go ahead and do that one. There's a 1 in 6 chance this could work out, otherwise I'm going to have to keep digging for more cards, but I don't have too many other cards that are going to work in this situation, so it's going to be quite interesting. Actually, maybe enchant possibly. So let's go ahead and roll this die and see if we land the 4 that we need. This would be nuts. Nope, but close, close. Oh, and actually this works out really well. So because I did the reroll first with Mystic Robes, and there's no spent icon on it, it just goes in the discard pile, I'll go ahead and actually use the wand for this one to decrease this blue die down to 4. And we are going to be successful. So I used 3 cards total to make that check a success. We didn't even need that other die. And just to ensure no confusion around what things were discarded versus spent, and to ensure I also didn't use the wrong terminology while I was getting rid of them, being more excited to pass the skill check than anything else, I've got the 2 cards, Spellbook and Mystic Robes, in the discard pile because they don't have the spent icon in the upper left-hand corner. The wand, however, is in the spent area, and I also want to make mention of the fact that I did kind of say that like I didn't need this blue die, but even though you don't make use of every die in every skill check, the increased odds that you're going to land a value that you can manipulate to get a success is very much worth it, which is the reason why I burnt so much intelligence there to have the opportunity to be able to pass this or have a better chance at pulling it off. So I've gone ahead and added 2 more XP to our pile as we're now resolving this skill check, and again, regardless of whether we passed or succeeded, wherever we have dice locked in that match the criteria, we get the corresponding reward below. So there's 2 XP there. So our XP is up to 8, which is fantastic. We're going to need that later on. At this point, we're going to return all the dice back to the bag, including the ones we didn't use or any modifier cards that may or may not be out. There wasn't any in this case. And then all the cards from the discard pile is going to come back to my hand. So Mystic Robes and the Spellbook is coming back, but the wand is going to stay in the spent area. The rest token's also going to flip face up. So with 8 XP now, our rest token face up, and we pass the skill check to try and interpret what this individual's trying to say to us. It states you roughly understand the org's meaning, and now we're going to move to E8. Paying careful attention to the ogre's speech, you can tell that he is angry about the chest and whatever is inside of it. He introduces himself as Tog, and he tells you that the Dragul invasion was meant to bring home artifacts like the one at his feet. After all the death and suffering of this war, he has finally reached his mission's end, but he can neither move the chest nor open its lid. As he speaks, Tog sinks into despair. His homeland is gone, the invasion has failed, and where will the Dragul go now? His are the complaints of an invader who killed many of your compatriots and now is disappointed in his own losses at war, but your efforts to understand him have kept his attention fixed on you, allowing the halfling in black to creep ever closer to the orc. A moment more and Tog's life will be over. Now this is a tough one. We have to choose whether we want to warn Tog so that he can make an escape or wait and let Tarek do his work. This is a tough choice. Look out, you cry. Tog is startled and leaps backward, knocking Tarek to the ground. When he sees that you have saved him from assassination, the orc grunts his gratitude to you, climbs the wall of the outpost, and leaps into the darkness beyond. Tarek stands and dusts himself off. Needless to say, I'm not impressed, he says. Warning an adversary of my attack is nigh treasonous. Nevertheless, your mission is accomplished. The orc has fled, and we are here with the chest. You examine the area around the chest and find that the orc left behind his coin purse. So we get to gain 4 gold, and next we get to reveal title card 1. This is our very first title card. It states, at Blacklake, you spared the life of an ogre in the crosshairs of Tarek Nolan. This kindness will not be overlooked neither by the ogre nor by the halfling. It states below it, title cards. Find the deck of title cards. Do not shuffle or examine them. They should be in numerical order as their numbers are on the backs. Find the card number and place it front up in the title space of your party journal. So we currently have a total of 8 XP, we have a total of 11 gold, we have all of our different reputation markers in place in the 0 positions currently. The new title card is in the center, we have our bonus play token available still, and of course the rest token is face up, which means we can rest in the near future. I'm really hoping that that can happen sooner rather than later. And then keywords wise, we have Grick, Alarm, Knoll, and Open. We now have some favor markers to adjust, so we're going to adjust them -1, +1, depending on the icon, so you can literally see them down below here. It says adjust the favor markers on the faction tracks as instructed by the action indicators below. For example, if you see -1 for a particular icon, it instructs you to move the favor marker 1 space to the left if it's a negative, and of course if it's positive, you go the opposite way. So we have 2 adjustments to make. And this is how your choices and impacts you have within the game world itself are going to change the reputation, whether it's with the King's favor, the Starlit Door favor, or the Dragul favor. And just like that, the markers have been moved. All right, we're going to head back into the book and see what happens next. Now this is a first. There's a combination of keywords going on here. So it says if you have both the keywords goblin and alarm, you're going to E12. We don't have the goblin keyword, so we're skipping past the top one there, the next one underneath of it, but we do have gnoll and alarm, so we're going to be going to E14. Now that the outpost is calm, Tarek relaxes on a tree stump and carves slices from an apple. Oh, I just remembered, he says. I should thank you for bungling your approach to the gnoll camp. You made so much noise that all the goblins from my side of the lake waded into the water in hopes of watching you die. I could not have asked for a better distraction. Tarek points to the metal chest with an apple wedge. All that's left for me, he says, is to figure out what is locked inside. Upon closer inspection, you discover the white metal of the chest to be Dragul, an ancient alloy forged to contain objects from other planes. No force will crack it. Its lid must yield to some other secret. You find a pear-shaped indentation above its keyhole. Tarek notices your interest in the chest. You can return to your regiment now if you like, or you can stay and help me open it. Adventure complete. It says your mission here is complete, leaving you free to explore the area at your leisure. Are there parts of the lake you have not yet visited or items you have not yet found a use for? From now on, when a choice indicator gives you the opportunity to move to another location, you may instead turn to the final section of the storybook titled The End. If your party is exhausted, mark the death track and read the corresponding entry in the Tome of Encounters. Now, at this point, we're not going to have to dig into that, but I'll let you discover what exhaustion is all about inside the rulebook. We didn't actually land on it here, but you will just keep track of the number of times you become exhausted right on your campaign log, and that's going to have an impact. When moving around on the adventure map, you do not need to stop at locations without XP or tokens on them. So this is what I mentioned earlier on. You can basically jump around so long as there's nothing impeding your progress towards that location, like a token or XP that's sitting there. When you return to a location that you have previously explored, make sure to read the base text of the entry again. So if you go back to a location like the Goblin Camp, you're going to start right at B and work your way through things from there. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I am very interested in resting. And the other thing I'm interested in doing is potentially trying to use an item that I have, the Ancient Key. I also have the pendant to maybe try and see if I can get this chest open. Now, looking at the two items, if I wish to combine them, there is no stamina cost to do this, as both of them are set at 0. So let's go ahead and check out E86.95. You press the lodestone pendant into the pear-shaped indentation on the chest and insert the ancient key. There is a click of mechanisms within which allows you to turn the key. The chest pops open. As the chest pops open, the earth quakes and the sky crackles with strange purple energy. For a moment, you hear the screech of bats and you smell a briny sea. Tarek holds forth a chainmail sack of the same white metal as the chest. Quickly, grab the object and place it in here. You reach inside the chest and pull forth a plain glass jar of translucent gray material. Strange, colorful images pass through the material as if it were displaying the dreams of another world. You place this curiosity in Tarek's Dragul sack. Immediately, earth and sky are still. A fine discovery, Tarek says, admiring the jar through the chainmail links. I've only seen one other like it. Then he pauses to consider you for a moment. Well, not only did we impress Tarek, even though we decided to warn the ogre of his impending death, which kind of went against what Tarek wanted overall, we still were able to get the chest open, which I'm sure makes him happy. It states here to reveal title card 2, Revealer of Secrets. It says, in the Dragul outpost, you unlocked a Dragul chest and took possession of a jar of translucent material. What secrets does this strange substance hold? Underneath of this, ironically, if we had have actually sided with Tarek and allowed Tarek to go and attack the org when he was there, then we would be at 1 or higher and we would go to E19. But because we chose to warn the ogre of his impending death, we're going to E20. Tarek frowns. "I'll be hanging on to this," he says, tucking the jar into his pack, "but now that you've seen its power, I have no choice but to recruit you." He pulls several empty Dragolium chainmail sacks from his pack and hands them to you. "There are Dragolium vaults hidden all over Nalos," says Tarek. "Each holds an object of great power. We cannot let them fall into the wrong hands. By the king's orders, we must gather as many as we can, and with haste. We have two options. One is to rest, and if we move to another location, as it mentioned earlier, we're going to move to the end." So the only major choice left to do, you'd think, would be to rest. But I want to talk about this quickly because it could be really easy for new players to the game to think that resting at this point in time, right at the tail end of your storybook, when you're moving right into that ending portion of the book, that it's a good idea. And it's actually not a good idea, because in between the adventures, when you're going from one storybook to another, you're going to be resetting things. So your fatigue area is going to get cleaned up. All your spent cards are going to come back into your hand. So don't go ahead and, as I'm going to coin it, force rest at the very end of your adventure to not only be spending XP to, wipe away a lot of the issues you had during the story you just got through for no extra gain whatsoever, because you're going to get that for free in between the adventure switch. So, long story short, I'm not resting right now. Quite happy not to be resting, as I get to go into the ending of this with 8 XP. Your mission at Blacklake has ended, and Tarek wishes you Godspeed as you return to your regiment. "My own mission takes me elsewhere," he tells you, "but I have a feeling we will meet again." As you travel back, you have time to collect your thoughts and puzzle over the things you've seen. Which titles did you earn? You think back on Tog, the ogre who you spared from Tarek's blade. His look of gratitude is still fresh in your mind. Strange that at the end of this long war you have finally made a bit of peace. He complained that artifacts had been stolen from his Dragul city-states, and you wonder if their invasion of Nalos might somehow be related to this theft. In any case, somewhere in Nalos wanders an ogre who owes you a debt of gratitude. Now, before I go ahead and read this next title entry out, I'm going through each of these. For every title that I have, I'm reading an associated paragraph. If you don't have the particular title that's referencing, you're going to skip over it. And there was one title we didn't get, but I'm going to leave that hidden. Revealer of Secrets. You wonder about the power of the jar that was hidden in that Dragolium chest. How could such a small object shake the earth and rend the sky? Strange images floated through the material inside of it. The jar must be an illusion, or else from some other plane, for nothing like those images exist anywhere in Ulos. So we now have a conclusion, depending on which keyword we have, which is tied to how we began our adventure in the first place. Our very first keyword was Grick, so that is where we're going to go. End 2. Upon your return, you find your regiment preparing to march. Orders to move west, a soldier tells you. General Grick is advancing on Bog Root Swamp. You report to the general, who smiles when he sees you. Just in time, he calls. General Garrick hands you a letter from King Terran. It seems the king's hometown has been attacked by a giant troll, and he wants you to bring him its head. My duties take me to Bogroot, says Grick, so when you're done with the troll, you'll need to meet Zalek in Sebek for your next assignment. Grick slugs you in the shoulder to bid you farewell. You head toward the coast. After a 2-day march, you can smell brine in the air and hear the call of gulls. Soon you will arrive in the halfling town of Jolev, where you must fetch the head of a troll for your king. If you do not have the title, Revealer of Secrets, you're going to go to End 3. Now, we do have it, so we are not going to go to End 3. Next, it says, each player, you may now advance your character, and then after that, clean up of the adventure and save your character. And there's a whole section on saving campaign progress. So first, let's just deal with advancing our character. Let's talk about advancement of your character. So after each adventure, the party gets the opportunity to advance their characters by spending gold and XP before the next adventure. The very first thing we're going to do is prepare the market. You'll go ahead and shuffle each of the 5 market decks that are inside the tray, reveal the top card of each of the decks, and then place it face up. If any of the market decks have been depleted, you're not going to reveal cards from those decks. At this point in time, nothing's been depleted. We're just getting started here. We have armor over here, scroll, skill, trait, and weapons. You're having one of each of these cards flipped upside down. Again, you have no idea what they are until they're revealed. We have a runic amulet as an armor. We have clarity as a scroll. diplomacy as a skill, relentless as a trait, and unholy flail as a weapon. With the market prepared, we'll come back to that in a moment. Next up, we're going to visit the Adventurers Guild. The players can spend XP at the Adventurers Guild, as it mentions here. There's a breakdown of the advancement as well as the XP costs for how we want to spend that XP we've gained, and we have 8. Let's go ahead and walk through all the different rows for the different advancements I could potentially go after here with my 8 XP. So the first row is talking about advancing your character's health by 1. So it's 1 XP in terms of its cost if the current health of my character is less than 25, which it certainly is right now. It's 14. Now when I created my character, actually I didn't create it, it was pre-generated at the beginning of this, or in the setup video at the beginning of the showcase, I actually had 16 as my starting health. But then when I added in the expansion, which added in a backstory component to my character, further flushing it out, giving me a couple attribute bonuses and such, it reduced my overall health from 16 down to 14. So I'm actually playing it a little bit under what the norm would be, at least, right? But again, it all balances out in the end, but it might be a focus for my character, being that I took a couple hits on health to kind of spend some XP to boost that back up, especially seeing as I came out of this adventure with 11 out of 14 in terms of fatigue stamina, which is pretty dangerous and could have led me to some exhaustion, so that's not good. The second row here is to increase the party's combat dice by 1. So in order to do this, this is actually quite costly. You take your current combat dice limit, for me, which is 3, and add 5 to it. So literally I'd have to spend every single XP token that I have here just to increase my combat dice limit up by 1 from 3 to 4, which is pretty useful in combat because, again, the more dice you have in play, the better chances you have of actually getting through that combat successfully, but that is certainly going to cost you. Now the third row here is increasing the party's bonus play limit. Right now my bonus play limit is quite low, it's just 1, but you have to add 5 XP on top of that, so it would cost me 6 to go from a bonus play limit of a current 1 to 2. Which is nice because that allows me to play additional cards into my hand, but maybe not a focus this early on, especially for that kind of XP cost. But I could see how both row 2 and 3 will be huge later on. And then another one that is nice to build up over time is increasing the party's mastery level by 1. There's a mastery track, which we haven't really touched on much at all, on the campaign log, and that is going to allow you to break into different levels of attributes in terms of their max limits. So if you want to have a higher max limit on your attribute rows and be able to put more of the stamina cubes in there by default, this is where you want to go and master things that way. But again, it's going to cost you. So just to close the loop on how the mastery track actually progresses, if you look at it on the campaign log, it has a number of boxes. So the very first sectioned off area says attribute score limit 4. Now what you're going to notice is there are 3s in all of the boxes, at least the first 4 boxes, and then a dividing line. It goes to the next section beyond that. So to increase the party's mastery level overall, the players, or in my case playing solo, just have to spend the amount of XP indicated by the next unmarked box on the mastery track. So in this case, it would just be a 3. Once the box is marked, then I can go into my character, and if there was more characters in play, all of the characters could do this. They can increase an attribute score of their choice by 1, but you still have to respect that limit. So after you pass by the dividing line after the 4th 3 there on the far left hand side, your attribute score limit is going to go from 4 to 6, and then to 8, and then to 9, and then to 10. So it's progressively going to go up, allowing you to really bolster how much you can build out in each of those attributes. So as you go along, this isn't actually a bad way to make yourself a more balanced character with your XP. So I'm going to choose to spend 6 of my 8 XP, 3 for the first box and 3 for the next box, crossing both of those off the mastery track, and now we can go into our attribute rows and increase one of them by 1 and another one by 1. Being in the very first section of the mastery tracker, attribute score limit for each of these rows can go no higher than 4 currently, but that's okay because I'm going to put the 2 points that I have to spend, both of them are going into strength because that was 0 when I started off my adventure, and I want to be able, especially when playing true solo with a character, to be able to handle situations where red dice are needed. So I'm going to go ahead and boost that up by 2. I have 2 more XP to spend, and I'm going to use this to uptick my health from 14 to 16. And just like that, we have a little bit of a health boost, which is fantastic. We're going to take all the XP we just spent, throw it back into the supply, and we're going to head to the market. So while at the market, of course, you're going to use the gold you've gained in your adventure in order to buy and also sell cards that you might want to get rid of and gain gold for. Now, if you choose to sell cards that you have in hand to the market, you're going to return that card to the matching market deck because, again, every single one of these cards is in one of those categories: armor, scroll, skill, trait, and weapon. But you'll return the card that you're selling back to the supply, and you get to gain 2 gold from it when you sell it. So when you're looking through your hand of cards trying to decide if you want to sell anything, the one restriction around selling is you need to ensure that it actually has a cost depicted on the card in the top right with that giant numerical value. If the card does not have that numerical value in the top right, you can't sell the card to the market. But whenever you sell a card to the market, you're only getting 2 gold regardless of what's in that top right hand corner because that is the purchase price. Now, I'm not looking to sell anything in my hand at this point. I really want to spend some of my gold to buy some stuff here. So currently I have 11 to spend, which would give me some flexibility on the cards that are presented here. There's also some interesting information that can be found in the top right-hand corner of each of these cards as well. Some of the cards are going to have markings around where the cost is. So for instance, diplomacy here has a cost of 8, but it says minus intelligence. So what that means is whatever your current intelligence attribute score is at the moment, which for me is 3, I get to reduce the cost of this card from 8 down to 5, making it cheaper to pick up. There's also cards in the game that will be cheaper to purchase for particular races, and they'll be mentioned right in the top right-hand corner. So, of course, you have to be that race in order to get that discount. I'm a construct, so I wouldn't be able to take advantage of the discount for Relentless. But because my intelligence is so high, it's the highest attribute one I have, diplomacy might be a great pickup. It's just going to cost me quite a bit, even with the discount at 5. Here's an up-close look at the Unholy Flail. This one says to increase a black or purple die by 1 or 2, and then it has an ability on the bottom you can also take advantage of. On the left-hand side here, we have an amulet, and if it's a purple die, we're able to re-roll it, or we can decide to uptick it by 1 or downtick it by 1. And then the clarity one, and it's actually quite a costly card as well. It costs 7 outright. There's no discounts on that at all. And then the clarity card there, which is a scroll, says add 1 to stamina, or add 1 stamina to one of your attribute rows from the supply, ignoring the usual limit. So that's actually a really, really good card. So here's what I'm choosing to purchase. A couple quick notes on the discounts. You're going to see the attribute related discount across any of these different card types in most cases. The race related discount is only on the trait cards from my understanding based on the rulebook. I've gone ahead and decided to go ahead and purchase diplomacy and clarity. Now I'm going after diplomacy because being able to manipulate a die that is red is related to strength, which I now actually have a decent rating in. And also the blue die is powerful because it's my highest attribute row right now at 3. So that's a really good card for me. Plus I get that discount. I gotta take that card. And again, the one beside it, Clarity, was a surprise. A very cheap card that allows me to basically plug in stamina into an attribute row even beyond the normal limit. Plus it's a card, neither of these two cards are spent cards. I'll go into my discard pile, and after a skill check or a combat, they'll come back into my hand, and I can just keep on using Clarity every single time to just constantly make use of that. So that for 3 gold is a steal, and I'm going to actually leave the other 3 gold out of the equation. I'm not going to bother selling any other cards, although I mean it's tempting to sell one of the cards in my hand to get 2 gold to uptick this to 5 and then maybe go after the Unholy Flail, but I don't have a real driver for it at this moment. I might regret that later. For now, we'll just keep some money behind. So we're now done advancement, and as the Battle at Blacklake adventure stated at the very end, we now move into the saving campaign progress. Now, after every adventure, the party has to save their progress, even if they intend to continue the campaign. There's important steps in here. The first step is to erase all the keywords from the keyword space on the party journal. Next, you're going to return all the map cards and item cards to the discovery decks, put them back in numerical order according to the numbers on the card backs. I've already done this step. I cleaned this stuff up just prior to us going to the market. Step 3 is to store the party's title cards with the party journal for use in the next adventure. Do not return the party's title cards to the title deck. You will greatly regret that, so leave those there. You're going to store each player's hand of cards separately for use in the next adventure. Next, record the party's current gold and XP totals in the saved gold and saved XP spaces on the party journal. So in this case, I have no XP. I burned all of it. I didn't save any XP at all. But gold-wise, we kept 3. So we'll put that down in the bottom right-hand corner. Next, return all bonus play tokens, gold, and XP from the journal to the supply. Next, mark the box that contains the favor marker on each of the 3 faction tracks to record the party's current standing with those factions. Now, if you're continuing your adventure, no need to do this, but if you're actually saving it, definitely make sure you do it. The last step is to mark the box on the campaign track that corresponds to the adventure that the party just completed. And that's everything you need to know to move into adventure number 2, Terran's Trophy. And at this point, we are going to end the showcase. I really hope that this series was informative in helping you either learn the game or to make an informed decision on whether this game is for you in the future. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts were on the gameplay. If you're not a patron on my Patreon, we would love to have you. There's early access gameplay there as well as a number of other bonuses. Thank you guys again for taking the time to watch the series. Enjoy role player adventures, and as always, keep on rolling solo.